Welcome to the Sales and Marketing Playbook. I'm Craig Andrews. This is Evan Polin. And when we come back, we're going to talk and debate over sales and marketing. Evan has a viewpoint. I have a viewpoint, but I want to make sure that we're debating so you guys have a better understanding of what we're going to talk about. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Sales and Marketing Playbook Unleashed, the premier podcast for innovative growth strategies, hosted by two seasoned experts. Meet Evan Polin, the president of Polin Performance Group, a master in sales coaching with over 2 decades of experience. Evan is not just a consultant, he's a force in sales, focusing on mindset, planning, and skill development. He's also the co-author of Selling Professional Services the Sandler Way. Joining him is Craig Andrews, partner and CEO of Beholder Agency, an expert in growth marketing. With 20 years under his belt, Craig blends marketing creativity with strategy to propel businesses forward, making Beholder Agency a leader in effective marketing solutions. Together, Evan and Craig are here to share their wisdom on winning strategies, best practices, and transformative insights that will fuel your growth. Get ready to revolutionize your sales and marketing approach right here on the Sales and Marketing Playbook Unleashed.
Again, welcome to the Sales and Marketing Playbook. I'm Craig Andrews, and I'm with Evan Polin, my partner in crime. Evan, say hello to the audience.
Hello, audience.
Very good. Well in time. So we're going to debate. Actually, I fibbed. We're not going to debate. If you've watched our show, if you've watched our podcast, if you listened to our podcast and watched our show, I had those two flipped back and forth.
I'm going to do very well in this debate.
Exactly. You realize that we are in a position where we always talk about sales and marketing should work together. But what I thought would be important for us to do is to kind of go through each of the top 13 topics that sales and marketing go through. And this is going to be one of two parts. And go through so you can see the perspective from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective. Each appropriate team should have an idea of what the others are going through so they can kind of work together to get the most optimized viewpoint. What do you think about that, Evan?
Yeah, I think one of the places where I've seen sales and marketing be the most dysfunctional is when one isn't trying to walk in the other's shoes. They don't understand from the other side perspective. And it's like, why won't these people do it the way I want it done? Or, why are they being resistant?
Yep.
But if they don't truly understand where the other side's coming from, what kind of pressures they're getting, what they're being measured on, that's when you've got conflict within the organization.
And what's that phrase? Walk a mile in someone's shoes routine?
Yeah. So if you walk a mile in their shoes and better understand, it's going to make things easier. The other thing that I would say for the business owners, for the managing partners listening, this is really something that's going to be driven from the top of the organization.
Yeah.
Because if the owner, if the managing partner isn't doing a great job communicating, then both sides are going to be at conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really when that happens, typically that's more on the owner and the management team than it is the head of sales, the director of marketing. So I think as business owners and managing partners, you also need to understand where which side is coming from, what lens they're looking at things through, so that when you lay things out, you're not setting up one side to fail, but you're setting it up in such a way that everybody is moving in the same direction to help the organization grow.
And with that being said, Evan, let's get started. The first topic that we're going to talk about is time to market. Okay. Time to market's important. So why don't you go ahead and start? What is your viewpoint from a sales perspective, Evan?
So from a sales perspective, there are two things to consider when we talk about time to market. And we also talk about what drives the salesperson's behavior, the sales team's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
One, what the owner needs to realize, what the marketing team needs to realize is in good organizations, people in a sales role have metrics, have goals they need to hit. They've got quarterly goals, they've got monthly goals, they've got annual goals. So when we're talking about putting together a program, it's important for the owner to remember, it's important for folks on the marketing side to remember that the sales team has goals that they need to hit on a very regular basis, and that's how they are being measured. Quite frankly, in most circumstances, that's how they're being compensated. So if they're hitting their goals, they're making good money. If they're not hitting their goals, a lot of times they're not making much money or any money at all. So the number one thing that is driving the sales team is I need to get X amount of dollars in within X period of time. So from the sales perspective, if the marketing team isn't taking into consideration, okay, well, as we're running campaigns, as we're doing things, we need to make sure that, yes, we want to be long-term focused, but if we're not doing things in the short term, if we're not doing things to help the sales team hit their goals this month, this quarter, then the sales team may stop paying attention to what marketing's doing. Mm-hmm. And they may focus on the things that are going to drive sales to hit them achieve their goals. The other piece when it comes to time to market, and then I'll throw it back to you.
Sure.
To keep in mind, and sometimes the marketing team forgets about this. Sometimes the business owner isn't aware of it. But a lot of times with sales, depending on the products or services you're selling, the sales cycle could be anywhere from people who are selling, lower end things or things that customers have to buy, or the contracts are timed. That may be a one call close, and that may be one conversation to convert a lead into a client. But there are other products and services that are being sold that may have a 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24-month sales cycle. So as we're putting together campaigns, we need to keep in mind, what is the product or the service that's being sold? What is the typical sales cycle for that? And then any kind of marketing campaign, any kind of expectations needs to go along those lines. Because if a sales team is saying, hey, we want you to hit these goals in the next 30 to 60 days, but it's a 6-month sales cycle, well, you're setting that team up for failure. And there's no way that you're going to look to achieve the sales goals that you're looking to achieve for the organization. Craig, from a marketing perspective, how does marketing, look at timing, look at, time to close, those kinds of things?
So to do a job effectively, a marketing team generally focuses a lot on the research. A lot of times when we're dealing with business owners, especially small business owners, they're looking at, I need marketing to help me increase my sales, right? So they think a light switch gets flipped, and then all of a sudden we just do something magical, and all of a sudden these new leads come in the door. But the reality behind it is that when you're talking about time to market, you're talking about finding out the right personas, avatars, however you define it. You're talking about the right areas. You're talking about the budget that we can do, developing the materials that sales can use, and all of those things, which if it's really, like you mentioned in the beginning, if it's set up appropriately, it's already been developed and designed and said with the proper wording that helps sales as a tool, right? A lot of times what I've been recently been explaining to clients is marketing is the process of incorporating all the marketing tools and making them operate the same way. So when you're talking about time to market, it's really important to understand if you need leeway for a 6-month sales cycle, I probably need the same 6 months to kind of make sure that I'm talking to the right people, right? And this is why the debate always happens between sales and marketing, because with marketing, if you can be more niched as possible, the easier it is to sell to those persons to understand the information that's coming about. Right. So go ahead.
And I think an important message for business owners, for managing partners, I don't know if this has happened to you. This happens to me at least a dozen times a year. I will have somebody who's let the sales problem go on too long come into me and say, hey, Evan, you've got to help me with ideas, with training, with consulting. I've got a 45-day runway left. And if I don't bring in X amount of sales, we're going to go out of business. We're going to have to lay off most of the team. One of the first questions I ask is, well, geez, how long is your sales cycle? And if they tell me they've got a 3-month sales cycle,
yeah,
but they've got 45 days to turn things around, I unfortunately have to share with them that it's too late.
Yeah.
That I've run out of the magic dust. And I don't have that magic dust to make people, close in half the time that it typically takes to close.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's happened with you where small to mid-sized businesses have come to you after it's already too late.
Yep.
And they're so far down that, unfortunately they can't be saved.
Yes. And a lot of times they don't take no for an answer, right? Because they know it can be done. But the reality is that sometimes our job, when especially when it comes time to market, that category we're talking about, is to tell them the hard answer, which is it really won't work in that fast amount of time. Maybe we can find some other ways to make it easier.
Yep.
So let's jump to the next one. The next one here is handling competition. Handling competition. How do you handle competition, Evan? You're in a networking space. You know that there's another sales coach there who probably doesn't do as well as you do, but they're there. How do you handle it?
Probably doesn't do as well as I do.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. They definitely don't do what you do.
So for the sales team, for myself, it's really important to know the competition, to know what you do well, what your strengths are, who your ideal clients are, and to know the challenges of your competition, what problems they run into, what complaints people typically have about the competition, so that when you're going to market, you can lead with questions that's going to try to point out what you do that may be different than what the competition does, to make it very easy for that light bulb to go off over the person's head, to get them to go, hey, this may be a really good fit. So let me give you two examples. I've got an IT managed services client right now. They have a service where phone calls come in. When phone calls come in from clients who are running into IT issues, they get a live person on the phone within 30 seconds. They also know that 98% of the competitors don't provide that service. So when their sales team is going out to networking events, when they're sending out emails, because they know that that's the biggest frustration of most of their prospects, and they know most of their prospects aren't getting served well, that's what they will lead with, knowing that it's oftentimes going to lead to, no, I'm not happy with this. Yes, I am sick and tired of waiting. Yes, it's costing us lots of money because our issues aren't being addressed quickly enough. And that gives them a big opening. For me personally, in the sales coaching, sales consulting, sales training space, I provide assessments up front so that I can understand the strengths and weaknesses of who I'm working with before I start the program. And I can really customize a program around that. I know that the overwhelming majority of my competition doesn't do that. So that will lead me to ask leading questions. If somebody's talking to myself and one or two competitors, I'll kind of give them suggestions of questions I'd be asking if I were in their shoes. And oftentimes when those questions get asked and it comes to light that my competition doesn't do a lot of those things, that immediately kind of positions me in the lead. The sales team needs to make sure that they've got the resources to know who their competition is, to know what the strengths and weaknesses are, so that they're asking the right questions. But gone are the days of my prospect doesn't know anything. Nobody's done any research before they come to me. For the overwhelming majority of you, before you've ever spoken to a prospect, they've already done a good amount of research. They already have a pretty good idea. So if you can't come to the table with a lot of that expertise ready to go, if you're not asking those really good questions up front, if you don't know what differentiates you from the competition, then you are going to lose credibility very quickly and probably not close that deal.
And I would say that you kind of piggybacked on some of the things that we do as well. The difference is that we lead from more of a brand, right? And brand is not just your logo. Brand is, the way we try to define it is that what are people saying about you or your company before you even walk in the door, right? So if you have a situation of your company is considered the small guy because your branding, your logos, your website, your information isn't top notch enough for them to even consider you, then that's something that from a way that we help you trying to distinguish between your competition and you. We help you kind of bring to light your uniqueness in how that might be. So I'll use an example as you did. We have a client here who says, no one's coming into my door. I don't know why. I'm sitting right next to a major university, and nobody's coming in the door. The branding looks great, but the things that they're competing with are major franchise organizations who everybody knows their name right around the corner. So we have to use branding in a way to make all their uniqueness come to the forefront when it comes to competition. And another example where they are one of the big guys, because they're not as flexible, we have to now use data in terms of how they show up to their prospects and say, okay, if all your other people are going this way, is there another unique road that we can take that will allow you to stand to the forefront of that person when you're talking about the competition? And so a lot of times when it comes from a marketing perspective in competition, we don't really make the comparisons of, 1 = 1, because in a lot of cases, depending on who the audience is, the 1 = 1 will nullify. Another client we worked with a while ago was a vacation company. So you can imagine what their vacation stuff says, right? We have the best white sandy beaches. We have the best amenities. We have the best staff, and they all say that.
Yep.
So what's the difference, right? So now we have to play to the brand equals value. And how does that value equal this said audience? It'd be a lot more targeted. So from a competition perspective, we try to eliminate other ways in their branding to bring that forward and develop a strategy that'll help them move forward in the way that they would want to.
Interesting. The other thing for folks in sales to keep in mind is when you're out there going to networking events, going to trade shows, making cold calls, the marketing team can only do so much. When you are in sales, you are the home office. Mm-hmm. You are the corporation. So if you're having a bad day and you've got a negative interaction with someone, doesn't matter what the marketing, what the branding is. If they have a bad interaction with you, they will apply that to the entire company and decide not to do business because they had one bad interaction with one bad salesperson. Yep. So people from a sales perspective need to keep in mind, you are the face of the company. You might as well look at it as you're the CEO of your own business as you're out there selling. And if you give a bad impression, it doesn't matter how much marketing branding was done. You can ruin that in about 15 seconds.
Yep. And to piggyback onto that, we're going to jump to our next subject, which is product feedback. Product feedback. So to piggyback onto what you were saying there, part of the feedback, whether you're talking about the salesperson's feedback or product, right? Product and service, the feedback is relatively the same when it comes to that. A person can ruin the brand in the way that you referenced, right? If you're in a situation from a marketing perspective, when we're talking about product feedback, we're talking about using that data. So what was the interaction with the salesperson? What was the interaction with the product or service? How did they take to it? Are they repeat customers, right? Those type of things from a feedback perspective helps marketing move forward in how to double down on the stuff that works and to relinquish the stuff that doesn't work, right? So feedback is very important from a marketing perspective because we, other than talking to the salesperson, which if they're doing it right, they are, but otherwise we're using data to find out how that feedback is working from a marketing perspective. Does it make sense to you, Evan, to be in a position to put much more money down to a product that isn't selling?
Makes no sense whatsoever. It's also foolish to not go back and talk with customer support, listen to whoever's dealing with the clients to see what clients like and what they don't like about your products and services. Because if you're tone deaf to what's going on, we're going to waste a lot of time and a lot of effort on things that the marketplace may not need, may not want, or may not like about our particular product or service. And that's where having those avatars and knowing who we should be selling versus just trying to sell to everybody.
And I'll tell you what's interesting about that with what you just said is I've had clients in the past who goes, well, as soon as I started this thing, it just skyrocketed. It just took off for me. And I said, great. How's it working today? And they go, well, it's just dropped off since then. Did you ask them why? Did you go back to your past clients and ask them, what did you like or not like about the product? No, I know it's good. How? How do you know that, right? So that's the importance of product feedback. But tell me about it from a sales perspective in the feedback.
From the sales perspective, Ian, it's really important to be able to have that feedback so that when you're going out to the marketplace, you know what you should be accentuating, what you shouldn't be doing. And the other thing that I would say, and I'm going to kind of contradict myself a little bit, but from the sales perspective, you also can't get so caught up. I was recently working with the software company, and the sales team had a perception of, and this was customized software of the software, that they weren't sure how well it worked. So they weren't going to market aggressively enough. Now, this was just the perception of the sales team. The customer seemed to be very happy with the products.
Yep.
But the sales team were uncomfortable when new features would come out or new products would come out, and they would use their own self-limiting beliefs to keep them from going out and moving the company forward.
Yep.
So it kind of cuts both ways.
Well, and let's flip this on to one of the things that we both work on, right? So if you're talking about more the service side of things, let's take lawyers, right? What type of feedback?
They don't like that.
Easy. No, I didn't say that. You didn't hear that on this podcast. But take it from their perspective, right? What type of feedback should they be looking for?
So the feedback that they should be looking for is, do their clients feel like they're being heard? Do their clients feel like they're getting service? Do they feel like they're getting the appropriate touch and the appropriate communication? You picked an interesting one because, oftentimes attorneys can't determine whether or not their clients have a really good case. So sometimes it can't be based on the results, but it should be based on the communication, the service, the feedback, those types of things.
Yeah. And I think it plays to a lot of the stuff that you referenced before in terms of having a good idea of being able to tell them up front, here's the results that could happen, right? Because again, from a marketing perspective, we can't guarantee that you're going to sell off billions of these. We can start the process, but we can't guarantee it. It's very difficult to guarantee. And if anybody's guaranteeing it, you probably should walk away because there's a lot of factors that can change that data or change the results too easily to guarantee it, right? So from a lawyer perspective, they can sit back and prepare the client, make sure they're heard, make sure that all the things that are coming in and you're operating from the best possible position for that client. And I think that that's one of the things that goes into it from a feedback perspective.
Absolutely.
So let's move to the next one. We're talking here about alignment and collaboration.
So I think alignment and collaboration, I think this is the one that from the salesperson's perspective will oftentimes frustrate the salesperson more than anything else. Let me give you a specific example. I was just recently working with an IT company, and the IT company was running this campaign, sending out, multi-touch emails. The sales team didn't have a chance to view and look at the emails. And the emails had no call to action, weren't touching on the most urgent issues of the customers and the prospects that they were talking to.
Yep.
And surprise, over a several month campaign, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails went out and not one appointment was set because there wasn't any alignment between the marketing message that the marketing team wanted to put out and whether or not that's actually the feedback that the sales team was getting from who they were out in the field with, or that it went from the sales team's perspective, great, they're putting out some of this information, but there's no call to action whatsoever, versus their inclination to want to make sure that we're sending out things that are trying to immediately lead to getting a conversation.
Makes sense. And I think from my perspective is that this is a good way to segue into social media, right? So in a lot of cases, the clients that we deal with said, I need social media to be better, right? It's a very broad statement. So we review a lot of social media programs for a lot of people. And ultimately, I had a client who's putting up social media all the time. They're very consistent, which is a huge part of the battle. But then I said, what's the data behind the social media? What are people clicking? What are people reading? What sales processes have actually worked its way through the funnel to hit your home? to hit your sales team, excuse me. And they go, I don't know. I just know
That's
I put
what I
it up.
was going to guess the answer was
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. They just keep putting it up. So I had to explain to them the level of collaboration that your marketing and your sales team need for social media to work appropriately. Otherwise, you're just throwing up stuff, spaghetti on the wall, hoping something hits. And this particular client's been doing it for about 3 years. So you can imagine the time and the resources.
Give them another 2 or 3 years before they start tracking them. And I mean, come
should
on.
Should I give them 2 or 3 years?
You're watching the judgment here.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit premature. You're right. I should back off a little bit. No, that's crazy, right? So I had to explain to them because they swore they were correct. That's the problem with marketing. Marketing is very opinionated, right? So what their opinion of it is part of what the battle we face. But the data is what we use to be the neutralizing factor. So in the concept of alignment and collaboration is that we use that as a way of touching your prospects, touching your people who are your avatars, and seeing how they respond to it. And now you've helped your brand, you've helped your company, you helped your message. And so when we talked before about in earlier discussions here about being able to understand, or people understand who you are before they call you, a lot of time in the research that you referenced, they're looking into what you're talking about. And social media is the first touch to that allows them to go, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
Right.
And this is one of the places where, at least from my perception, marketing is a little removed. And it's important for marketing to talk to sales because the salespeople are talking to the customers, and for marketing to talk to customer service or customer success to understand what the client experience is and what the feedback is. Because if they're not getting that feedback, they are just putting out the marketing messages in a vacuum.
Yep.
Without Absolutely. Understanding how they're really hitting.
So I think that plays to our next subject, which is role in customer retention. So keeping customers might be important. Wouldn't you say, Evan?
There's nothing more frustrating than closing 40 to 50% more new business, but having 60 to 70% of your current customers falling out the back end.
Yep.
So client retention is extremely important.
And usually from a CEO perspective, what are they saying at that point? We need more customers. We need more. Get us more sales.
Right. And what I try to remind, those CEOs, those business owners, those managing partners, is it is 75% more profitable to keep your customers and continue to do work with your current customers than it is to go out and find brand new customers.
Absolutely.
So even if you're staying at the same customer level, your acquisition cost is so much more continuing to go out and find new ones.
Yep.
So making sure that those clients are happy when they come in is extremely important.
And the key part to that from our perspective is communication. And this is from our perspective, our viewpoint, when we're talking with sales, once we kind of get them in the door, talking with sales allows us to sit back and go, okay, what are their pain points, Evan, that we can create another channel, another campaign around that would help answer those questions to make your next step easier in the resale of them, right? So once they sign on for your sales or your product or service, they got it and they love it. Now, what are some of their concerns that we can now put into the website? We can put into a mailer. We can put into an email that would then engage them well before that time of renegotiating their new contract, right? Way in advance. Again, we need time.
I think the other thing that's really important in regards to this, in a future episode, we may have a guest on to speak specifically to this. From my perspective, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, not all clients are created equal. There are some clients that are more profitable. There are some clients that appreciate the work that you do and your core services more than others. So when we get to customer retention, the other thing we want to do is really go back and see, okay, which clients are our raving fans? Which ones love us? What is similar about those different clients that love us, that are perfectly happy paying our fees, paying our rates, paying for the products, or never asking for discounts? And then when we do more of our marketing down the road, how do we target more of those kinds of folks so that we are spending more time in front of the kinds of customers that we know are going to appreciate our products and services more?
Absolutely.
That will then make that conversion rate higher, keep our clients with us longer, and quite frankly, make everybody at your company, make everybody's lives easier if they're dealing with customers who really like the products and services that you're providing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the next one we're going to touch on here is content strategy. Okay. So here, from a marketing perspective, we're going to focus on a broader strategy that builds brand awareness. So from a content perspective, it ties to a lot of the things that we talked about before. Content can be email, content can be a postcard, content can be a website page, content can be almost anything that's engaging the customer or client and reaching out to them becomes content in our viewpoint. Blogs as well, right? So a lot of times when you're sending out communications from a content perspective, it could be videos, it could be a podcast, like this beautiful podcast that, I don't know, two brilliant guys have put together for you guys to hear an information, is a way of getting information to the target base so they can understand your perspective. And I'll say this as a quick point. Now with the internet and all the communication processes, and we talked before about the ability to distinguish yourself from another business, most of the time from a marketing perspective, it's the content.
Right.
What information am I passing across that's going to allow you to understand me better before you engage me?
And along with content, and Craig, I think that marketing, quite frankly, does this way better than sales. Do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of companies kind of having a marketing content calendar?
Absolutely.
And being strategic about it versus somebody going, hey, you know what? I've got an idea. Okay, let's go and write an article on this. Or why don't we just start this kind of email campaign? So do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of kind of having a content calendar?
Absolutely.
And why companies should be doing it?
So I'm going to use that as an example. You know, remember back in the day when newspapers were the main focus of everybody? Everything came through a newspaper, you know, the actual paper you held and you flipped through and you read. Okay. The one thing that industry did very well is they had a content calendar, which then allowed the advertisers in that case to know exactly what the focus of that paper or magazine was for that month of the year. So now if you have an idea, just a shot in the wind here. If you have an idea of what's going to happen January, February, March, April on a specific calendar of events, you can probably target the people you're talking to in the right way without having to be a spot on idea that has to be regenerated every time you go to produce some form of content. That also aligns to what the sales team might be in a position that they're pitching from a product perspective or a service perspective that particular month. So having a calendar allows you to organize yourself, get the sales and marketing team on the same page so that we can understand this month we're pushing said service. This is the most important service. Why? Because it costs us less. It increases our profit more during this time of year. And you can hear the data that I'm starting to pitch off here that's literally aligning everything up. So now, from a sales perspective, there might be a bonus offered to the sales team for selling said number of products, said service during that specific time. And that's why the calendar. Say it again. I'm sorry.
I said we call that a spiff, trying to incentivize the sales team to go out and sell a specific product or service during a specific time period.
So a calendar would sound like a really good move, right?
Only if you want to have a predictable result.
And marketing is all about a predictable result, right? So it's like baseball, having a batting average. If you know that this guy can hit home runs off a fastball, when that fastball comes in, he needs to be off the bench and on the field, right? Yeah. It's pretty simple. So we're not going to take too much of your time. This is part one of the two-part series we're going to do from the sales and marketing being in collaboration and working well together, or we called it debating in the start of the show. If you have not seen, reviewed, subscribed, or commented on any of our podcasts that we've had thus far, we're going to have the link into the YouTube video. You're welcome to subscribe on any of the podcast streams that we offer. You can visit smplaybook.com, and there will be all of the podcast streams we follow and the YouTube links and everything else in that fashion. Evan, do you have anything to tell people before we go?
I would just say that if you have comment, if you have opinions on what we've said, on what we've shared, please, go on to LinkedIn, add your comments, add your thoughts. We'll respond, and we're open to any and all feedback.
Absolutely. I'm Craig Andrews, and that's my guy, Evan Polin, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for joining us on this exhilarating journey through the world of sales and marketing. Remember, the playbook is in your hands, and the possibilities are limitless. Keep exploring, experimenting, and innovating, and watch as your business reaches unprecedented levels of success. Don't forget to subscribe to the Sales and Marketing Playbook Unleashed on all major podcast platforms, and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn for even more exclusive content. Until next time, keep hustling and keep winning.